This is Alexa Linton coming to you from the Cowichan Valley on Vancouver Island, and you're listening to the Whole Horse Podcast. We're now in season 9. Thanks to all of you tuning in, sharing with your friends, and keeping the momentum going. I couldn't be more appreciative. This podcast is dedicated to the beautiful and amazing horses in our lives and all things that uplift equine well-being and welfare, sharing down-to-earth and fascinating conversations with equine professionals about the little things that move the dial slowly but surely towards a better world for horses. You'll find all of the episodes, 146 and counting, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for being here and enjoy the ride. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. You're here for the Whole Horse Podcast, and we are officially in 2026. And I couldn't help but start the year with one of my absolute favorite guests ever. Shannon Beahen is back on the podcast today to start us out for the new year, and I'm so happy to see you. Thanks for being here, Shannon.
Same. And it's a full moon.
And it's a full moon.
I know. I just realized that like 30 minutes ago. We're going to talk beginning of 2026. It's a full moon. Let's bring it. Let's let the moon bring it.
Do it. I am very proud of myself. I got to just share that before we got on the call, was like, do I worm my horses right now? And I wormed all 4 of my horses in like 11 minutes this morning with the help of clicker training. So full moon.
Yeah.
Perfect timing after the big frost. I feel quite accomplished
nice.
Today.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we're here today to talk about something that I would say is pretty majorly up for me, and that you're hopefully all fingers and toes crossed, sort of on the other side of and feeling a little bit of reprieve from.
A little bit of reprieve. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of reprieve, which is being in the real bumpy ride that is recovery, and dealing with caregiver fatigue and dealing with the exhaustion that is supporting our horses or ourselves through a significant health challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Shannon and I have kind of been riding this adventure for a little bit. You before me in this particular scenario, but weirdly it seems parallel, similar ways with our horses. And I think it's a really critical conversation. So for those out there that are listening in that are like, oh my gosh, I've either have a horse that has had a thing, or I have a horse that's in a chronic thing, or I have, something going on for myself. This is a conversation. I hope you stick with us, that we're going to be diving fairly deeply, as Shannon and I do, into this topic today.
Yeah, for those that don't know, like I've talked about this on a few different podcasts about and on my Instagram. My horse Ivan last year came down with a virus, and that began like this massive cascade of symptoms. And starting November of last year, he was like basically on death's door. Which it began with like, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. How long is this going to last? 2 turned into weeks and months and almost a whole year. And it's no exaggeration to say like each of those days was like, is today going to be the day? And how do I get through this? And yeah, as you were kind of conditional in your way of phrasing it, like fingers crossed, we're on the other side of this. At this point, I know, like I'm dealing with a horse who has a chronic condition.
Yeah.
We're through the worst of it, but I also know that we could at any moment be flung back into the depth of it. And I'm grateful for every day that we're not. And in the meantime, like that year of him going through this, I got to learn a lot about myself. And I was no stranger to all variations of life sufferings before that. It's not like I was just this, lighthearted, freewheeling kind of person that had never experienced adversity. And now I'm on the other side of some adversity. I've dealt with a lot of adversity in my life in many different forms, and this was its own extreme kind of flavor. So that's just to give some context for your listeners. That's where I'm at personally. Beyond that, in professionally, because it all ties in. Again, for those that don't know, I'm more on the trainer end of things
Mhm.
professionally. That word is something I'm really loosening around because from the training context, as I went to softer and softer methods, so for a while there, I was kind of more known for like natural dressage and liberty. Originally I was dressage and eventing when I
Mhm.
was a normal mainstream coach rider. Then moved to more like natural dressage, liberty. And then as I went deeper and deeper into the trying to get into the softer, subtler realms, there always seems like there's like a layer before and a layer before and a layer before. So it's like, oh, I'm a rider. I'm going to try and now address groundwork. Okay, I'm doing groundwork. Now I'm going to try like liberty work. I'm doing liberty work, and now I'm going to push my liberty work to like deeper consensual work. And for me, that edge just kept moving further and further out. Like some of those edges being, I mean, I'd say the big breakthrough edge was nervous system stuff, because, this word consent, what do we even mean by consent? Can an animal consent? What would we look for to be able to tell that it is truly consenting? To me, the best answers are coming from the realm of nervous system stuff. But the other thing that happened at that layer of opening my own education to more about the nervous system was recognizing that we're leaving the individual horse. Hi, kitty. We're leaving the individual horse, and we can't answer some of these questions without getting into the relational side of the human. Whether it was me working with clients and feeling like, yeah, great, I know what to do to help your horse, but if I can't figure out how to get the human to have a better relationship with the horse, or the human to have a better relationship with themselves, or me to have a better relationship with human clients that aren't as easy to fix, quote unquote, as the horse, we got a lot of stuff happening here. And that went broader and broader and broader into like, oh, it's actually not just the human, it's the environment, it's the habitat, it's the spatial design. And so that's again to just put kind of where I'm located in the ecosystem of horse professionals. I'm on this really weird edge of now consulting with clients, not just on simple quote unquote training problems, we're into the full thick of the entanglement of human, animal, everything. And so, all this to say that this issue of chronic illness or critical illness or caregiver fatigue, this is something I'm consulting with a lot of clients on. And
Mhm.
so, some of what we're going to talk about today isn't just informed by my own experience with Ivan, it's conversations with clients and
Yeah.
what I'm hearing people really around the world dealing with. And it turns out a lot of us are dealing with the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Including me
Yeah, including you.
in this
Yeah.
moment. So I'll give a little context on my end of things because I haven't talked about this on the podcast yet. Is many of you may know, we took yeah, we invited a gelding named Reykur, an Icelandic, into our herd in September, I think, and with the knowledge that he had had bouts of pretty severe laminitis with rotation previously. The first bout, from what I know, being caused by a toxic plant in his hay down like well long ago. So we're talking like 8, 9 years ago. And then him coming to his previous person to me and me falling in love with him as a client about 5 or 6 years ago. And us sort of forming, let's call it a karmic bond of like me just being absolutely obsessed with him from that point onwards. him having another bad bout of laminitis with rotation 2 winters ago, what was thought of to be a winter laminitis, coming back somehow from that. So two kind of near death experiences,
Yeah.
which was interesting for me. I'm like, oh, I had two of those as well. Interestingly enough, you're now a part of my herd. So this, yeah, me taking him on with the understanding that there has been this history, that at the time I took him on, he was stable, or I thought he was stable. And then within about, gosh, just over a month, he had a relapse.
Mm.
Um, and so a month of us deciding to take him on, he had a relapse, which of course I had, me and the previous owner are good friends, and we'd been very clear on this could happen. Like, given the history, this could be a thing, right? In this relapse, he had some of the numbers that were coming back were really scary,
Mhm.
and from his blood work, and it was different. It looked quite different than previous times. And again, with rotation in the feet, or changes in the feet, shall we call it. Yeah, so that's kind of where I've been at for the last 2 months, is being with this horse that I have loved for years, even though he's been in my care for maybe 6 months now. And, I have an investment, as you did do with Ivan. I have this investment in, like, I want to keep him alive, number
Mhm.
one, but
Yeah.
also comfortable and with a quality of life that is in a place that makes
Mhm.
sense for him, right? And so it's been a really, really interesting journey. And we're going to talk about some of the pieces today. But Shannon gave me sort of a list of the things she wanted to talk about. And I was like, yep, 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 yep. Like, it just hit every mark for me, because I've been unpacking this, because I could not believe how much I fell into doubting myself, number one, wanting to make these massive pendulum shifts, like constantly, like, oh, well, this person says that you should do this thing, so I
Yes.
should do that thing. And
Yeah.
like, and thankfully reining myself in from most of those big, huge shifts, falling in that same vein into the sense of, oh my gosh, this person's ideology or my ideology or how I've thought about things must be the right thing.
Mhm.
And then that battle between that and, like, my intuitive knowing of, like, okay, like, no, but this is actually what feels right.
Yeah.
And then going to my therapist and being like, oh, right, I have some major enmeshment occurring
Yeah.
right now with this horse,
Yeah.
where I cannot get separated
Yes.
from his suffering, or what I perceive to be his suffering and his experience. Because in part, what I realized, Shannon, was the weirdest piece of this has been, and I don't know if you can relate, but like, the level of shame and guilt that has landed for me, like,
Yep.
this is where I probably will cry. Like, I cannot
Yep.
believe it, to the
Mhm.
point where I have isolated, like, I'm a person that
Yes.
has a lot of connections in the
Yep.
horse world, a lot of people that know a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I have found it almost unbearable to reach out to anyone and ask for
Yes.
help,
Yeah.
which perpetuates this sense of, like, I'm alone, we're alone, like,
Mhm.
what do we do? I feel so ashamed. Why can't I fix this? Like, it's been just so heavy. And
This was my entire winter
oh,
last.
I'm so sorry, because it
No, but
sucks.
everything you're saying, and you're
Oh,
going to the heart of the most tender part of it. And I
oh,
feel like I cut you off there, so I don't want to do that, but I
no,
just
not at
wanted to
all.
reflect back. Like, this is the tenderest part of it, is the shame and the beating up. And then, well,
Especially as a
should we start
professional.
there? Should we
Yeah,
just get
let's
into
start
that
there.
one?
Let's get into it.
Well, and I've got this, list of 10 things just to help me stay organized. That was the second on my list. Let's start with that. So, like, you use the word enmeshment. And this is a really subtle one that not a lot of people are talking about. My online course that I did a few years back, which is still waiting for its revamp, I promise I'll get it out one day. But enmeshment was one of the core concepts within it, and to give that a slightly different term, I mean, previously in psychology, it used to be referred to more as codependency. There's a lot of charge around that word. Enmeshment I think works a bit better. I like the thisness of enmeshment. I'm
Hmm.
doing this thing where my
Yep.
fingers are actually overlapping because enmeshment just kind of speaks to the energy of it, of there's just like a lot of entanglement.
Yeah.
And that's not entirely a bad thing, but it's knowing like when it helps us and when it doesn't. Um, so another word I give for it is like energy hygiene. If a
Totally.
person
Spiritual hygiene, energy
yeah.
hygiene. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And like, I wouldn't want to perpetuate this idea that there's like a pure state we can get to where we're not affected by the fluctuations of the beings that we love, because that's what it is to love. And that's what it is to be interconnected, is to be affected and to affect other beings. That's what we're missing in the world. There is so much separation and isolation. We want connection. We want to affect and be affected, but it's recognizing the subtlety around this concept of enmeshment, which I think can happen in training paradigms. But in this case, it's the way it comes up in health, or
Yeah.
caregiving. And this is a key one, especially so I work a lot on enmeshment in my own relationships, in my own practice, and yet I don't really see where I myself have gone wrong or have gotten enmeshed. It's usually in the caregiving is where it shows me, usually when health
Yeah.
fails or when there's suffering, because an animal suffering is one of the hardest things for me. It's one of those things where, like, if I'm trying to be a good Buddhist and like we're looking for where do you have like tons of reaction
Attachment.
that you can't even get inside the reactivity because the reactivity is just so big, it's going to be animal suffering for me. And so I know, like, karmically, this is likely where I have the work to do, but it's so big and it's so heavy. So when I feel it come up in relationship with a potentially dying horse or chronically ill horse, especially when there's that dual layer of I'm a professional, it's supposed to be helping other people, give them advice on caregiving.
I'm
And
supposed to
then
be the expert at this.
is this my business card? Are my animals my business card? So I'd say, like, so I'm talking about a lot of things at once, but I'd say that's a big one where we want to catch it, whether we're professionals who give advice on caregiving and then we now have shame because we think this is supposed to be a reflection on me, or whether we're not a professional and it's just shame around, I think mothers of young children know this well. Like, am I a good parent if my kids are not behaving perfectly? And I think this is something we all have to confront as caregivers of humans or caregivers of animals, is when we're having these overlaps, in either overlaps in identity, like, so there's a classic way of noticing the enmeshment. Who I am as a person is conditional on the well-being of my animal. Oop,
Oh,
pause, pause. Wow. And then we can think, and I'm just looking at that elephant art behind you because it just like came out as
oh
like the
yeah.
immensity of the weight of, like, I think of, okay, so if let's say I think of myself in the worst of Ivan's suffering, and I'm trying to take inventory of that energetic, emotional investment that goes on between him and I in that moment. And then I catch myself having one of those thoughts. I must be a horrible caregiver or even horrible at my job if I have a horse that's going through this. Oop, how can those two things be attached? Because the reverse of that would be for me to say I'm good at what I do or even I'm a good person, my horse has to be well.
Yeah.
Ouch. Look, what a burden for him to carry. Let's
Completely.
forget about me for a second,
Completely.
because I am very connected to my horse. And if he can feel any of that energy of you've got to be well for me to have the identity that I'm hoping to have. Whoa.
Yeah.
So
So heavy.
so heavy. And now the good thing is it went on for so long with him and so much of like if I think of like where was I physically? What was I doing when I was having these worst thoughts? I was curled in bed, practically with sheets over me because that I'm picturing that isolation you're talking about, not wanting to talk to anyone. I'm just like so closed in and I thought, great, let's get into it. This is me talking to myself. And I'm like, okay, how can I help him? Well, let's start by noticing that energy I'm putting on him is not what he needs to deal with. Now, I have my own reasons for my own self that I should be pulling those thoughts and that energy back. But even if I am a chronically enmeshed person that can only kind of clean up my own act to save the other person, that's a typical kind of enmeshment thing. I can only make myself better if it's on behalf of these other beings, then here's a great reason to pull that energy back. He doesn't need that energy. I need to let him be free of my conditions while he's in a deep state of suffering. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Oh, so much sense. Yes.
And I mean, there's so many other ways it comes up, but just that one alone. And then I was like, ooh, okay, so what's my work here? Some of my work is going to be in bed under the sheets, like I was just describing, to start pulling that energy back.
Yep.
Because of course, the doers amongst us are going to want to be out there. What can I give him? What medications? What
Completely.
herbs? What boots? What professionals can I get? What kind of therapy? And we're going to get to all those things.
Yep.
But that's kind of manic. Like that's what's the ground zero of cleaning this up? The ground zero is that energetic, relational, emotional piece. So I'll just
Yeah.
pause there on that
I
one.
love that. So I'm gonna give a little tool in here for people that are
Yeah.
listening because this helped me so much. So maybe it'll help someone out there.
Yeah.
So my therapist said, I'm seeing that there's some enmeshment. And I could literally feel when I thought of Reykur, my body like curling towards him. Like I want to just make you better. I want to fix you. I want to just like literally forcing him trying to
Yeah.
fix.
Yeah.
And that feeling in my body, that somatic feeling of I felt it before when I've been treating osteopathically. And then my teachers would come along and go, get on out of the field.
Yeah.
Get on out of there. When I'm treating and I'm like looking at my client, like I'm going to,
Yeah.
it's never helpful. We have to
Yeah.
come back from it, sit over ourselves, get over our feet, get over our bodies. And my therapist asked me for a visual. She said, like, what would you put up like a thicker skin? Would you put up like a coat of fur, whatever, like a visual?
Yeah.
And the thing that came to me because I'm geeky like that was a myelin sheath around a nerve,
Right.
right?
It is really geeky.
Because I
I
felt like
love
I was
it.
just firing
Yeah.
off all over the place. Like, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to do it,
Yeah.
And I was like, I got to just calm this down. And myelin
Yes.
sheaths, that's exactly what they do. They just encase those nerves, bring in the hydration, give them a nice like protection barrier,
Yeah.
and just set that system back up in a bit of containment.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I like that. So
It
every
occurs to me
time,
that's more than analogy. Like it occurs to me that is like you're getting into the what we'll loosely call the energetics, but like I think what you're touching on here, that the nerve endings
yep.
and what I refer to as energy hygiene, I think you're bang on with that being like the location of the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like a really nice, like, oh, and every time I think of it, I just sit back. I don't have to be firing off.
Yeah.
And nor is that helpful. Nor is that helpful,
Yeah.
especially when we have horses that are working with enough. They're working
Yeah.
with enough, right? Less is more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That, if we're talking about the topic of caregiver fatigue and, the words that we think of around that, burnout or kind of like frayed
Yeah.
edges. And I think
Yeah.
of, when that myelin My, you're the you're the neurology
Yeah.
expert here, but the myelin.
Yeah. The
Is
myelin.
that
Yeah.
correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I've heard it described when it gets into trouble. It's like how you think of shoelaces that have that little plastic at the end. And when the shoelace gets old, the plastic kind of comes undone and
Yeah.
it gets frayed at the edges. And so I think of that like energetically, just this frayed nervous system. And I also think of like my own protocols just in relational training. Like, what's the first protocol when anything starts to come undone? The way I work is let's just pull back to neutral. Let's notice that there's a chaos vortex that's either building or it's in full activation. And let's notice that there's a seductiveness to the chaos vortex. The seductiveness being that you become compelled to participate in the chaotic vortex. And somewhere you think like this is the solution. So sometimes the best thing we can do is to just, oh, look at the chaos vortex. And even things that are life and death, literal life and death, where we go, but I have to participate because it's life and death, and I have to participate in the chaos vortex because it's so compelling. Even then, I would argue that it's really essential to notice the chaos vortex doing its thing, notice the pull to get into the chaos vortex, honor it, tell it whatever you need to tell it. I understand why I want to go into it, but we're almost always going to be better served to try and reel the energy in. Now, those of us that are habituated to enmeshment type dynamics, and I would tend to think that a lot of people that would listen to this podcast would be, because it tends to be people that are more on the empath side of things, however we want to name that. Um, Pulling our energy back to ourself, not going into the chaos vortex is going to sometimes feel like abandonment, like we're abandoning the other being.
Right.
And to watch for that being part of the trap. And this is why I give that extra visual of like the pulling back into the self, not forever, but as like a recharging, putting the phone back on the charging station, coming back to what I call neutral, or however we want to envision it. Sometimes I envision it as like just pulling our energy back to self, whereas otherwise it was all these tendrils
Mhm.
into the other being, that it might feel like a selfish act or abandonment, but actually, this is letting the other being just sense into their own beingness, separate from the burden of our. Um, I I always bring in like in Buddhism, they talk about the first arrow and the second arrow. The first arrow being, there's certain things in life we won't be able to avoid. Problems are going to happen. Death might even happen. We can't avoid the first arrows because life is going to give us stuff. But the second arrow is when we add to the first arrow with these layers of like shame, um, doubt, panic, manic modes of problem solving or overdoing or micromanaging. This is where we can train ourselves to not add to our own suffering. And in this case, add to the suffering of the other being. Um, I will pause in a moment, but this wasn't on my list of 10, but I still want to name this. Like last year, I wrote some Substack articles about the underworld because I
Mhm.
was very much in the underworld. And the kind of token visual I used to open the piece was a picture of a mare in the wild. It was from, it's The Wild Horses of the Chilcotin. I can't see the author's name from here. It's on my bookshelf. Wayne McCordy, I think. But Wild Horses of the Chilcotin. So there's a chilling picture in that book, and it's of a mare in the wild in advanced stages of laminitis. Now, to call it advanced stages is like, I mean, I don't even think in our domesticated world we get to see what,
Truly
because
advanced.
yeah,
Yeah.
truly advanced, because and this is almost skipping ahead to one of my other points that I wanted to get to, which is about having a relationship with suffering. So I'm looking at this picture. The first time I saw it in the book, I couldn't look at it. I was like, the deformity in this horse's feet and just how they could still be alive went against everything that I know. And it also gets into like stuff around, God, what is nature's plan? And like nature, this thing we call nature is so trippy. Like we don't even know what it is to be a body in the wild. Problem solving through acute situations. Problem solving through this thing called suffering. Like deep suffering that our domesticated sensibilities are reacting at probably like a level of 1 or 2 to what beings that truly live in the wild deal with. Now, this isn't to say that I think we should all just learn to suffer more. Although in a little bit it's that. It's that I don't think we have any idea what the intelligence of wildness has the ability to do. Meaning that if we get out of the picture a little bit, if we take that piece around enmeshment and bring it back and wait to see what other intelligence is, whether it's the intelligence of our specific horse's body, for me, Ivan, for you, remind me. I don't know why I have such trouble with Icelandic names. It's really not that exotic. I think I'm just afraid to pronounce some of those names. Reykur.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whether it's the specific intelligence of their bodies or whether it's some other environmental intelligence or even relational intelligence, meaning like what other herd members can be doing to help.
Oh, yeah.
So I think this is this, I mean, I could go and go and go, but this is this extra piece around enmeshment as we bring our energy back to ourselves. And if we're worried that it means abandonment, to A, know that firstly, we're going to be better resourced if we can bring our energy back to ourselves to think clearly through this situation. B, we're not throwing all our manic energy onto them as an additional stack that they need to deal with in their original suffering. But C, to be open to the idea that there's other intelligences at work. Now, the jury's out on whether this mare in the picture, what her life was like. We have this word, quality of life, and we can get into that in a bit. But like, I'm just saying, looking at this picture as a meditation, to be like, she lived for a long time in advanced stages for her feet to get that deformed. Was her life just pure suffering? I suspect it wasn't. Or I'm willing to question my own domesticated sensibilities a little bit to wonder what life is like for a wild being who doesn't just have manic problem solving
medication and whatnot thrown at them
to circulate through. So maybe I'll just pause there. I mean, that's a lot. These are huge, but these are some of the things that come to mind. Yeah.
I love that. And I'm going to skip to kind of one of the points at the end because I think that it's like, it's what you're talking about, which is this idea that you shared of meeting the universe halfway.
Yeah.
Like, where does an animal exercise or have agency?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because, you know, when this happened for Reykur, for me, of course, there was that part of me, like my herd lives like yours on a track out 24/7.
Yeah.
They're out and about, they're doing their thing. And that's how I've chosen for my herd to live for a really long time.
Yeah.
One part of me was like, no, he has to come inside. Like he has to be cozy. He has to be tucked in, all of those things. And he told me in no uncertain terms, no, like, no, you need to let me out. I tried to lock him in for a couple of hours one day and his cortisol level spiked so bad that his feet like, flared.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, like that's like, if we're looking at a double bind, like I am not going to put you in a situation where your stress is going to go so high that you're actually going to be worse off on the whole than if, you know, yeah, your feet get wet or right, like whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
or you're moving more than maybe I feel comfortable with, or that's my thing. And it was a really interesting place for me to be like, huh, okay, like there's this other advice that I've heard, these other things that I've heard shared, and yet what I'm seeing right in front of me, what Reykur is telling me,
Yeah.
is he needs to be out with his herd.
Yeah, of
He
course.
needs to be moving.
Yeah.
He needs to connect with that wildness,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of the protocols, if we're talking specifically around laminitis, involve locking them up, starving them.
Yep.
And laminitis is a really tricky one because, I mean, I'm sure there's other conditions that behave similarly in the sense of like once it's happening, there's really not a lot you can do.
Nope.
It's a real exercise in having to let go of.
Totally.
There are some things you can do, and if we want to get into like the specific practical advice, we can talk about that, although it will almost immediately get into like debates.
Totally.
But point being, like it is one of those conditions where you have to kind of ride it out. Pain medications don't tend to penetrate to then they don't help with that once the flare is happening. And so it really does come back to a lot of like, how am I as the human going to manage my own reactions around this?
Mhm.
And can some of that be a little piece around, well, just I don't want to just say trusting our intuition because I mean it's so complicated. Like intuition, if we have a nervous system that's primed to kind of like panic, it's like, well, then what is the intuition? Like, is that just fear talking, or is that like
Yeah.
a deeper wisdom? So I'm always like hesitant to just say trust your intuition. I think in the way you're talking here, this does make sense. It's learning to read a horse. I guess that's what I
Exactly.
wouldn't just say trust intuition. It's having a deep enough relationship with your horse, having vocabularies beyond just training, having that literacy with your specific animal's body so that you can read them in and being open to allowing their body. I mean, really, it comes back to giving their body agency, and giving their body agency to there are some cases where I'm gonna push back on, like my journey with Ivan's laminitis, which was kind of one of the tertiary quaternary, like one of the third or fourth kind of symptoms that came out of his initial um, virus, but his is, deeply connected to insulin spikes.
Yes. Same
The
with Reykur.
virus,
Yeah.
the virus triggered a bacterial infection, a systemic bacterial infection, which triggered a huge insulin spike, and then came the laminitis. And so the laminitis has been the biggest thing that we're fighting, but really, is it the laminitis or is the biggest thing the insulin? And then what's before the insulin? You could go and go and go. And so one of the things where I've had to really push back on my own ideology around listen to their body is food intake. I have been, and I don't want to
Hmm.
get into like the hot button debates because there's just some of these things that people will die on this hill. And I'm saying his illness has a lot of things that used to be things I would die on the hill and argue. I've descended from the hill. One of them being for him, he can't have 24-hour access to food. It was so hard for me to let go of this thinking. I'm not saying other people need to let go of this. I'm just describing my own journey with believing strongly in 24-hour access and really trusting this idea that they will self-regulate around food. He does self-regulate around food, not enough though. And
Mm.
not enough with modern grasses, and trust me, we pay top dollar
Hmm.
for the lowest of the low. And we shop, like we look for the best hay, the lowest, we do the analysis. And I have had to come to realize that that's something I can't trust his body on. And it really sucks because I really do want to give this message of just listen to their body and trust it. And it's not that simple. I guess what I'm inviting people to um, The listen to their body is knowing their body is a multitude of voices. There's not just one singular them, and I'm going to learn to tune into them and listen to what their inner volition wants to express. This in itself is a modern concept that there's this whole being with a one, they call it a homunculus in philosophy, like this idea that there's a being within the being that operates the being. And it's like, I'm here to say there's a zillion different beings within the being.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I'm so much more interested in like modalities like somatic experiencing that teach tracking of phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need to get attached to this idea of like, what is Ivan trying to tell me? Because when you track phenomena, there's not a singular Ivan who has this inner thought that he is trying to convey to us. He himself is a multitude of things. And
Mm-hmm.
it's my job, it's almost becomes a form of divination. We forget that divination at one time wasn't just this like, finger to the wind, like, what are the gods telling me? It was a detailed art of reading signs,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and so to me, somatic experiencing is like that. I'm getting really good at like the signs might come from the birds in the sky, truly. Sometimes the birds as kind of early alarm. The birds kind of like speak the nervous system of the land.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's literally like the birds might send a message. It's not magic. This is cause and effect.
Yeah.
It's just how nuanced are we going to get with our observation? So where am I going with all this is it's developing our literacy to read our animals' bodies, but not getting stuck in the trap of like that there's a self-knowing being, like a singular self-knowing being inside of any of us, whether it's me, Shannon. I certainly don't. I mean, any of us that have looked internally, you're going to find competing urges.
Mm-hmm.
I can't just eat all the cupcakes. I can't. It's not good for me. Oh, but my body says, that's a certain department of the body that I'm going to kind of train myself to listen to a little bit less.
Mm-hmm.
So the literacy of the body that I'm talking about is a very detailed thing. And it comes from reading signs that, yes, come from the body, from an individual body, but come from other places as well. I've started to know that certain triggers can happen as big weather changes happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to brace myself to get ready that there's going to be certain protocols, even things around like to blanket or not to blanket.
Yep.
Ivan's a draft cross. He's got a big, thick, heavy coat. He's got lots of, whale blubber there to protect him. But I even had to get a certain formula, especially when he was sick, where he had to get a clip on his belly because he'd
Yep.
sweat. But then when certain weather systems would come in, he actually needed a blanket because there was kind of a deeper, to get into Chinese medicine, there was like a dampness quality to
Yep.
his constitution where he needed a little bit of help in certain parts of his body. So, like, it's quite complex. None of this is simple, but it's also so cool to read them at this level. So, I'm a little bit out in the weeds, but part of what I'm coming back from this to say is there's a lot more observing, a lot
Absolutely.
less ideology
Well, when I
that
look
can
at
take
a
place.
horse like Reykur, and maybe Ivan's the same, he's very stoic. I've never had a gelding before. I have
Yeah.
very, very melodramatic mares, Diva
Yeah.
being the most,
Yeah.
who tell me point blank that things are happening for them. Very, very external, very obvious,
Emotive.
which is amazing. I've come to realize that thank gosh they're like that
Yeah.
because Reykur is not. And I've never had
Yeah.
a stoic horse before.
Yeah.
And it literally came down to me having to like take his heart rate to know if he was stressed.
That's
Things like
it.
that. And I'm
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
what? Like, that's how I tell if he's stressed
Yes.
out. Things like just watching his eyes, there would be this hooded sort of look that he would get, so subtle. And I'm like, yep, there it is.
I
That's
love
happening.
I love
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And It's, if we're to turn this into like practical advice for listeners, because, part of me is going, it's so complex and it's all these subtle things. And I wouldn't want people to get so overwhelmed by that dimension that they're like, how am I ever gonna, I'm not a diviner. Like, how am I gonna figure this out? I love the examples you just gave. So for one, there's the very emotive, let's say maybe happens more with mares, although not always. And so I guess the invitation here as caregivers is to develop a profile. And don't wait till they're sick to develop a profile. Like, get a profile. This is how I train these days. I do the bottom up method of training, which is, when you and I last met on your property, I was there to talk about observational horsemanship. And that's what I meant by this, is getting kind of a baseline profile of both the individuals and the collective. And to me, my geeky mind loves this. I love filling in the profile with details, because then there's a profile that's going to happen when they do get sick, where it's like, what is my finger to the wind, like read of what has changed here, knowing that on the more stoic ones, there might not be able to fill that profile with as many data points, but there's still something. Maybe it's just going to be those baseline diagnostic things that is old school pony club, which is what's their heart rate, what's their breathing rate, what's their temperature. Great. Let's start there as the profile. What else can we look at? Well, facial expressions. You talked about the hooded eye. There's so much to be, sometimes when people are switching from macro viewing to learning the art of micro or molecular viewing, which is what I'm talking about here, it's like something in the perception sees it, but discards it as not important information.
Yeah.
Like they'll go, well, yeah, of course he's not moving. And it's like, well, why is that an of course? Like, write that down, whether you're mentally writing it down in this profile. Like, and even this, I'm just throwing at this idea of not moving, because I would imagine, let's say in Reykur's situation, if he's got laminitis, there's not a lot of movement. But then I'd even get inside that profile. I'd go, okay, they're not moving. Great. Let's write it down, even though it seems so obvious that it's not even worthy of writing down. Never think that. It's
always important.
Yeah.
Because when we think of those baby steps.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Like when we get into that, you talked about it, little by little.
Yeah.
How to bring them back.
Yes. Or how to notice they're improving.
Tracking the improvements, everybody, is so important, because the normal becomes the normal.
Yeah.
And we forget. It's this beautiful human trait that we have. And you will notice it for yourself as well. Like, I noticed this with my stuff, is like my health stuff. I would be improving and improving and improving. And I'd be like, oh, I've always been like this. Oh no, right. I used to have migraines this many times a month. I used to have this, I used to not be able to do this movement pattern or lift this thing.
Yeah.
These are the ways that we track our success, especially when it's not coming in those grandiose, like massive ways that we're going to be like, oh my God, I went to a show and I did all these things. Like, no, literally the other day we had like such a win here with Reykur. I want to share. This would be like 2 days ago. And it was like a beautiful sunny day here and crisp and cold. And he just started frolicking, Shannon.
Oh, wow.
Like frolicking. I didn't even get it on video because I was so in shock.
Yeah.
And he's galloping and he's bucking and he's like happy in his body. And I can't tell you, Patrick and I just watched with these huge grins on our faces.
Yeah.
Because it was the first time since his health event started this time that he's had that kind of vitality, that kind of energy, right?
Yeah. And vitality is like one of the, if we were putting categories in this profile, like the vitality scale, and I'd put that alongside this idea of movement. So it's like, let's say again, a situation, this would be same for training. Like, I have a horse and they don't want to move, even separate from laminitis. It's like, is it true that they don't move? Like, so they just stand there. There's no movement. Yeah, they just stand there. There's no movement. Okay, let's watch them for a bit. And this is in the case of either like training or even laminitis, let's say most extreme non-movement kind of situation. And even from there, with Ivan, we would track, okay, how much is he lying down?
Yeah, totally.
Right? So we can even go no movement and standing, or we can go no movement and
Lying
lying
down.
down. And I even got into kind of polling experienced horse people I knew, people that have sat with suffering bodies, like who have like hours in the experience bank, because you can find a lot of experienced horse people, but not all horse people have sat with suffering bodies. Some people are the kind of horse people that as soon as they get a suffering body, it's sold or it's given away, and they don't know the realm of suffering body. I mean, do your horsemanship a favor and grow your tolerance
Yep.
around suffering bodies, watching your own reaction to suffering, and then watching your ability to witness a suffering body, not just for spiritual purposes, but how much can I be present to the experience to even know, as even like a scientist, to go, what's going on here? Like we just have so little experience. But so I did a little poll with certain friends, one friend in particular who had spent more time in like developing countries
Mm-hmm.
in the horse world, and so has a bigger data set
Yep.
of just different conditions around horsemanship. And I said, can you tell me, like, how, I already knew they had been with a lot of horses that were on death's door. And I said, of the ones that came back, how many of them like went into a lying down state, and how long did they go? Like, how long can horses lie down for? I don't just mean in a day, but like, let's say in a month or 2 months. Is increased lying down, I guess this is another way of saying it, meaning they're about to leave this world? Well, it turns out it's not. I mean, and a lot of us would panic around, like, oh God, they're
Mm-hmm.
lying down. I had to train myself to get like okay with seeing him lie down and even send it a different energy of, oh, isn't that
You're
great that
resting.
he's taking care of his body enough to rest?
Yep.
And then also, so that's one. And now track, how often does he rest? And is that increasing or is it decreasing? Or it even do things like, I get a little panicky. I can see them from I'm like looking right now from my living room kitchen window. I can see them. So all of last year, I'd be like, is he lying down or not? Of course, I wanted to see him lying down less, but I was trying to be okay with seeing him lie down. So then I'd even track things like how long after I go outside does it take for him to stand up? Or if
Mm-hmm.
I have food that I'm about to serve, how quickly does he stand up? And these would be all my little data points that I'd be looking for to give me clues around what's his current state of being. And I train anyone that was working with him or like going out to feed to tell
Mm-hmm.
me like, oh, so he was lying down when you went out? Did he get up as soon as you came out? Yeah, he got up as soon as I came out. Or no, he didn't get up as soon as I came out, but as soon as he saw there was food, he stood up. And I'm like, okay, that is something on the vitality scale. I don't know
Definitely.
what it means yet. This is part of the art of tracking phenomena. I don't know what it means yet, but it's a new data point that I can start tracking. Um, so that's in the dimension of movement, but even like other things, like there were times where he barely wanted to move his feet, like static being.
Yep.
But is he truly not moving? When you walk to the left, does he track you to the left? Do his
Mm-hmm.
eyes? Do his ears? Does his head? Does his neck? Ah, yes, yes, yes. Check, check, check. That's
Totally.
movement. Maybe that's all we can get. There were times where that's all I could get. Great. This is where today's exercises are going to take place. We're going to move your neck to the left, not physically. I just get him to track me. We
Yep.
move left, we move right. I got one of those big play balls. He loves to play catch with those, just with his nose and his
Yep.
head and his neck. Oh, great. We can create new movements. We can create longitudinal movements with him stretching his neck down and pushing the ball out. Plus, there's just the fun.
It's fun. It's
And it's
fun.
and there's a track on, we're getting a read on, is he still in this world? That's something I had to keep
Absolutely.
checking. Is he still in this world? Is he open to any relational acts? Any. This became one of my reads, and there were times where it was definitely close, where we said, are we calling the vet today?
Yep.
And we ending
I
this.
wondered. Yeah.
And it came down for me to these set of data points. And I needed this kind of calculated thing to help keep my emotional separate
Mm-hmm.
from,
Mm-hmm.
so I had actual data points to settle into rather than just because I didn't trust my intuition. This is back to this idea of like intuition versus, because there
Yeah.
was times I was so dark where I was just like, what's going on here? But I would go into those points of like reading vitality, my own little checklist, and I'm like, oh, they're all there. Like, and sometimes the last one we have left is their spirit in the eye, right?
Completely. There's something.
Ivan never lost that.
Yep.
But I now have a baseline on like, I think he would be like that mayor in that book of like, and the vet definitely said this too, he's, I don't think through most of that, I mean, I think life sucked for him, but I don't think I think his spirit was like, yo, like, have you not lived any lives yet? Like, what's your t range of tolerance for like existence? He was just kind of like, I won't say he was like, I got this, but I never felt like his spirit was touched. I didn't feel like his spirit was getting
Yeah.
crushed. And I guess what I'm saying to listeners is these like intangible reads that we might otherwise call intuition or just these generalized ideas of how much
Yep.
spirit is in the body. I don't want to downplay that we come fully equipped to read these things without detailed educations on it. But I do want to just add the idea that there are observational things, even without getting a degree in
Yep.
whatever, that we can train ourselves as caregivers to just read what's in front of us and watch how it changes through the day to day, through the week, through the month, through the year. And as a caregiver of a chronically ill horse and myself, a chronically uh, I don't want to label myself as chronically ill, but I deal with chronic illness. You have to get good at
Yep.
reading, tracking the phenomena, and watching how it changes over time.
And it's these little baby steps. Like one of the other things with Reykur that I noticed was how long I could pick a foot up. How long I could pick a foot up, because I would just count. I would pick up one foot and
Yeah.
right away, like when it first all started, he could hold up for like 3 seconds before he would drop back on the other side and be like, I can't.
Right.
And it was heartbreaking. It was
Yeah.
heartbreaking to
Yeah.
feel that. And he could pick up his backs for, a good chunk, but the fronts and one side in particular harder. And it was so enlivening to see. And the other thing he would do when I did do that work with him, I could see him shutting down. I could feel him sort of like disengaging from me, not wanting, I would usually treat him like with of course sugar-free treats.
Yeah.
When he just wouldn't even want to take treats. And I was like, okay, interesting. And that was a
Yeah.
part of my tracking. And then, to the point now where he's like happy to just hold his foot up. He's just happy to hold his foot up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, like we are shifting. There is shifting. I think for many of us, this sense of like, how do I say this nicely? But when I started to think about it, he came into my life as sort of my riding horse. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so there had a part of this journey has been for him and for me to step back from my goals for him, my agenda for him and be like, what do I want out of this scenario? Like at the end of the day, what do I want? Because I may never have a riding horse again. I have to face that reality. It may never happen because he's a little guy.
Yeah.
He may never be able to bear my weight sustainably again.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do we want to happen? And I realized in that this horse is a part of my family. He's a part of my herd's family.
Yeah.
And he's incredibly important no matter what.
Yeah.
So what I want for him is to actually have as sustainable a life as possible.
Yeah.
Where if possible, we can get to a place where we don't get the peaks and valleys. knowing that he's had previous toxicity events, knowing that there could be organ damage, knowing that, you know, these pieces could be true. That is my hope and my goal. Now, cherry on the top, if at some point he feels like he can ride or do things again. Like, but I had to really let go of that sense of this is what we're going to be. This is where we're going, because it would have changed my plan in some ways. Right. And I want for him the best possible life he can have. That's what I want. And, yeah. And it's interesting. I found, like, I'm writing an article on this right now, and I'm like, okay, like recognize in yourself, what is the goal of this recovery? Because it's important. It changes the goalposts.
Yeah. And I mean, your priorities get reorganized pretty quickly in these extreme events. You know, for some people, they get reorganized and they just, the relationship drops. And it's really, I mean, that's its own whole thing that is just so disappointing to witness in the horse world. How, I don't know. Sorry, I don't know if there is a nice way to say it, but fickle some people are with their, I think it's an important thing for people to consider before getting a horse. I mean, this is such just kind of basic parental kind of finger waving stuff to, like, are you going to love this being? Like, is this being going to be a part of your family? I can't stand around and condone. I don't really care if this sounds exclusive. People that are disposable with their animals.
Yeah.
Even if they're in the sport horse world and they say, but I have goals. We need to move beyond this paradigm of them. I mean, that's great. If you've got goals and you want to achieve these things, you don't think I still have these goals? Like,
completely.
I'm a pretty good rider. Like, I friggin' love riding. You know, people might look at my Instagram and think, oh, she doesn't ride anymore, or if they ever even knew me to be a rider. I love riding. I love it so much.
Me
For a
too.
long time, my whole persona as a horse person was on the rider end of things. Like, other people were good at stable management. I was like, I don't care about that. I'm a rider. You know, that's what I do. I'm a rider. I might, you know, Ivan has been giving rides lately. I never thought in the worst of his crisis that we'd be back in a place where we're riding. I don't think I can name it as like he's back to riding. I don't know. It's kind of hit, and you know, it's like a lot of nonlinear healing stuff. But I've really had to come to terms with what my future is as a rider, let alone as like one that's setting serious goals as a rider. I mean, that might never happen. You know, he was it yesterday? He's been giving a lot of these lately. I asked him to come into trot. He has the most glorious, you know, you come to live for these things. And this is going to be a riding thing I described, but it's versions of this. So I might never be competing in some whatever. I don't think I'd want to compete in the normal competitive world anymore. I might never even be able to do like a dressage test on my own property or whatever it is I want to do. But I tell you, he yesterday gave me this where I asked for a trot, and it's just this beautiful lifting of his back, this beautiful like prance that only some of these more Baroque types, he's my poor man's Baroque horse, can give, where there's just this lifting of the back and this total self-carriage that comes in the first step of trot, that is this light as air prance. And we sometimes will get it and it's like 3, 4 steps, and then, you know, then we come back to walk. I've come to learn to live for those. But even outside of the realm of riding, I have to say, like, he's recalibrated me. Once you make this commitment to them as family members and you come through something, you've been at Hell's Gates, and you come back, there truly is a kind of love. Like, I'm not exaggerating when I say, like, to have had a few weeks, months now of peace, of not like moment by moment being like, oh, when's the next shoe gonna drop? I have said out loud to my horses, it is an honor to care for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these moments where it's just like, screw riding. I mean, I love it. That was what that whole speech was about. I love riding. But even if it never happens again, having gone through this, the depth of relationship, and I only have
Mm-hmm.
two right now, and they're not asking for more, if
Yeah.
I can sense into it. I would like more, but I don't think any of us have the capacity for more right now. The love that is circulating, the depth that is circulating, and also when things come back into balance and I can just go out and enjoy feeding and cleaning and envisioning the next track extension, that alone is like the three
Yeah.
steps of trot of this beautiful prancing trot where I'm just like, maybe this is all, and I don't think that's a sacrifice. It's coming to love these other aspects of care and knowing that, like, man, this thing that we all fell in love with horses originally, whatever this mystical, freaking all-consuming, obsessive kind of love that comes from horses, you know, they say we only use a portion of our brain, like percentage wise. I think this thing that even the worst kind of horrible horse person that is somehow still obsessed with horses and claims to love them, that is captivating us. Like, I think that on some intuitive level, even those people know that there is just this immense spirit that is from this species. And these chronic illnesses and these other things that are forcing us into other types of relational
Mm-hmm.
being with them is to access these other percentages of what it is to be horses and humans in relationship. Not only am I saying like I think it's what we get when this chronic illness happens, or if there's a potential to access this other immenser, bigger love thing. I think in my observations, in my own practice, there's more and more of it happening. I feel like more horses are going out of balance, and I don't necessarily think it's some of it is pathology. Some of it is genuine pathology. There are things we just need to learn to do differently. But I think some of it is a deeper kind of spiritual shifting of the whole planet, but it's got its own unique kind of species expression in horses.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just a species expression, it's a species expression relative to humans and horses.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that sounds too mystical for people. I don't even know if they make sense of what I'm just saying. Doesn't really matter. It's happening.
It's happening. And I
It's
think
happening.
what a perfect thing to, yeah, bring that home, to just land that plane. Because I think, like, when I first met Reykur, I'm going to cry again,
Yeah.
like 5 years ago, as his bodywork practitioner and spiritual guide. I don't know, not even, but you know, like as
Yeah.
an animal
Spiritual
communicator.
guardian. Yeah.
The one thing he said to me at that time that was so strong was like, I just want someone to love me well. And like, I remember back to that. And when he started to board at our place, and then it came time for the shift to happen, I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. I was just waiting for his person to say something.
Yeah.
And people could look at even my decision to take him on. I was like, financially irresponsible, or, you know, whatever. But I recognize the karmic contract
Mhm.
with him is so strong,
Yeah.
that there was no other answer that I could give, but we'll take him. We'll be his family.
Yeah.
We'll love him to freaking bits.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever that looks like. And it feels like, for me, and I'm sure you also question, you know, there's always the question, what did I do? Like, oh my gosh, should I keep going? What's the next step? Like, what will today bring? And it's just like, being with him, I've noticed he just is like, be with the day. What
Yes.
shows up today? Where am I at today? Where are you at today?
Yeah.
Where are we at today? And that's where I land.
Yes.
And it's been amazing because I've been really struggling. We didn't hit on it majorly, but the catastrophizing. I've been really struggling mentally around the catastrophizing.
Yeah.
And I feel like the learning from him in part is about starting to release some of that thinking and just be with what is present for us in that moment, knowing he has agency, I have agency, we're these unique spiritual beings in these bodies doing this thing.
Yes.
And what does love look like?
Yes, that is love. That is. The catastrophizing is easier because it allows us to leap to an endpoint that might feel certain and then
Totally.
hang out on that island of certainty. And I see this in training too. This has actually become probably the biggest obstacle for me with even really well-intentioned clients is they don't want to sit with the unknown. And part of that is it's actually not that unknown. I'm very good at naming small phenomena
Yeah.
that we can cling to some of these little bits of small phenomena in an otherwise unknown. Like you're talking about him inviting you to be with the day. Well, on any given day, there's something we can hold on to, right?
Totally.
Might be very small, but it's really come to like hurt my heart when I feel like I have certain clients that are open in theory to all the stuff that we've talked about today or on other conversations. But where I see them turn away and I feel like a shutdown in the dynamic, not just with me and them, but what hurts is that I'm seeing it, that they're doing that to their horse.
Yeah.
Is that they fail to not just be open to the unknown, but be open to the small. Be open to the small, like the small wins, the small indicators, the small. And to me, opening to that is love.
Yeah.
And it hurts my heart. I can only imagine what it feels like for the horse, where their owners turned away because they are still stuck on some vision of whether it's a training goal or whether it's a health goal that just feels more solid for them. And I'm like, as long as this is a very hard thing to explain. Thank you for even letting there be this much openness to it, because this, for my own practice, is the frontier of where it's not just that I'm losing people as like, this is where in the client relationship, can't go further with them. I can get over that. What hurts me is that them turning their back to that is also them turning away from this subtler phenomena within which love exists.
Yeah.
That the horse is inviting them to. I know this is so loose what we are talking about, but the looseness, the mystery, the unknown, the subtleness, the being okay with what comes up today, this is the edge. And to be quite honest, like any practitioner that I think is worth their salt, it doesn't matter what modality we're talking about. If I see them only being an expert in fixing problems and not with developing a practice of having capacity to be with what is, not to just sit there and go, okay, it's not as fluffy as it sounds. It's not just being with what is. We've named a number of practices within that can be concrete things. But someone that doesn't have a capacity to be with suffering, to be with difficulty, to be with not being the master, not being the expert, not being the fixer, not being the manager. You know, I'm way more on the animist end of things. And I think that anyone that's going to say they care about animal agency or animism or even non-supremacist paradigms needs to start watching the aspect of their own practice that is wanting to be the master, the knower, the shaper
The
of all
savior.
things, the savior of all things. So if my words fail to name the exact thing I'm trying to name here, that's exactly, because even linguistically, we shouldn't be able to entirely capture it. And this is why we might have to be poets, or we might have to be just a little less than eloquent in naming some of this stuff because it is going to come more from the feeling realm. And even in suffering, in the feeling realm of suffering, in those uncomfortable feelings of extreme intensity that make us want to jump to catastrophizing, love is accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And in the ideal case, even when we do have to let go of our animals, and I know you've been present for a number of departing events, to me, this is the best we can hope for. This is all practice for being able to be present and access something called love at that moment of departure.
Yep.
And if we can't, that's okay too. It's hard. But this is the practice, is to open to all this unknown, to be with the feeling enough so that we could still access the feeling of love amidst it all.
Oh, beautiful. I think we have to close there, although we could just keep talking and talking.
Yeah, there's
We
always
really
left
could. There's
over.
always more. There's always more,
Yeah.
but I so appreciate your perspective and your wisdom. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Shannon. And thank you, everybody who has stayed with us through this conversation. I hope that I'm really curious to know how it landed. So please message me, message Shannon, let us know. How do people get in touch with you, Shannon?
So my website, humminghorse.com. On Instagram, I am humminghorse_SB. If you just look up humminghorse,
Yeah.
basically anywhere, you're probably going to find me.
Amazing. Thank you for today, and looking forward to chatting with you all in a little while. Thanks for listening. Bye for
Happy full
now.
moon.
Thanks for listening in today. Many of you know that in March we completed the Whole Horse Apprenticeship with promises that it would be back in a new form after 9 years of 6-month programs. So I'm particularly delighted to share that this community is now an ongoing membership with all the goodness of the apprenticeship and much, much more. So if you've been craving a horse community that is as geeky as it is grounded, as restorative as it is resourcing, and as collaborative as it is creative. So if you're interested in that and getting the Whole Horse Apprenticeship archives and all sorts of other amazing bonuses, head on over to outsidetheboxequine.com, which is where this membership is based, and check it out. I hope to see you in the herd. Bye for now.